This is part 2 of Build a Call Center with taskrouter, where we're going to build an agent screen for the taskrouter application we built in part 1. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, check it out in the card above or the description below. We'll start by using Composer to install the twilio-php helper library. And once that's done installing, we'll create a PHP file called agent.php to hold our web page. First thing we'll do in here is pull in the twilio-php helper library that we just installed, and then we'll fetch our account SID and auth token out of environment variables. Then I'll declare a workspace ID, and that is going to be the workspace ID from part 1 when you created taskrouter. The worker SID will be passed in when we load the page, so we'll go to agent.php and pass in a worker SID, so we'll fetch that out of the request. Next, we're going to use a worker capability object from twilio-jwt taskrouter. We'll use this to fetch an access token to the taskrouter REST API. We need to pass in the account SID, the auth token, the workspace SID, and the worker SID to create that capability. With the capability, we're going to ask for access to be able to update the worker's activity, and then we'll fetch a access token using the worker capability object using the generate token function. Now we're ready to work on the markup. We have a title for the customer care voice agent screen. Then we'll pull in a style sheet called agent.css that just styles things nicely for us. Then we'll have a script tag that'll pull in the taskrouter.js library. And finally, one more script tag here that will declare agent.js, which is a JavaScript file that we'll write when we're done with this PHP file. That's it for the head. Let's move to the body, where we'll define a content div. Inside of the content, there's going to be a bunch of sections. Only one of these top-level sections will be visible at a time, these agent activity sections. These represent the different activities that the worker can be in, and we're going to toggle between them. So they're going to be very similar. Each one is going to have a paragraph tag that indicates what the name of the activity that they're in. And then there's going to be a button for a lot of these. The only one that doesn't have a button is busy, but most of the other activities will have a button that will allow you to change to another activity. So there will be a data next activity attribute that we can access from our JavaScript file later. So since these are very similar, I'm just going to speed through the rest of them. There's a section for idle that has a button to go offline. There's a busy section that just has a paragraph that says busy. And then there's a wrap-up section that allow you to either go back to available or to offline. The next section is persistent. This is the log section. This is going to contain a text area that just logs out a lot of various information that we get back from taskrouter.js. This could be that a call is coming in from the call center. Could be that the activity was updated, that sort of thing. So it's all the information that we're getting back from the library. And then we have one more script tag, and the sole function for this script tag is to load up a worker token into the window. And that's just going to pass in the worker token that we fetched up in our PHP code. And that'll do it for agent.php. Let's shift our attention to agent.js. We'll create agent.js, and the first thing we'll do in here is create a logger function. This is going to take a message and add it to that log section that we created in our PHP file. So we'll fetch the log by ID, and then we're just going to change the value. We're going to append the message that was passed in, and then scroll down by the height of the log. Our next function will allow us to show one of those activity sections in agent.php. If you remember, each one of them had the activity name listed in the class name. So we use document.getElements by class name to fetch the agent-activity plus the activity name that was passed in here and show that given element on the page. Then we also need a function to hide the rest of them. So think about it, we're going to hide all of the agent activities and then show an individual one. So we'll just loop through all of the agent activities and hide those elements by setting their display to none. Next, we'll have that agent activity changed that'll pass in an activity. The first thing it's going to do is call hide agent activities to hide all of the ones that we don't care about. And then it's going to call show agent activity, passing in the activity that we do care about showing on the page. Now we need to turn our attention to the buttons on the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to fetch all of the activity SIDs that the worker supports. So we'll call worker.activities.fetch, and we're going to get back an activity list. And what we'll do is we'll grab the data out of that activity list, and then we're going to loop through all of these activities. And we're going to store the activity SID in a way that we can reference it by its friendly name. So this will make it convenient when we're looping through those buttons and they have the activity name for the next activity that we want to send them to. We can just reference this activity SID's object. So next we'll look up all of the elements by class name for the change activity class. These are going to be those buttons on the page that allow us to change the worker into a different activity. So we'll loop through each one of those, and we're going to hook up their onClick event. And what we're going to do in there is we're going to fetch the next activity out of their data set. If you remember, they had data next activity specified on them. And then we're going to grab the activity SID out of our activity SID's object that we created above by referencing the friendly name. And then with that activity SID, we're able to update the worker into that next activity SID that was on the button object. The next function is going to handle all of the taskrouter information callbacks. So the first one is when the taskrouter.js is ready. So once we're done initializing, it's going to change the worker's activity to whatever state the worker is currently in, and it's going to say that we successfully registered that worker onto the page, and that worker's current activity is whatever activity they're currently in. The next event that we can register for is the activity update. So in there, we'll call agent activity changed to show the worker's new activity. And then we'll log inside of that log section that the worker activity changed to whatever activity they switched to. Next, there's a bunch of information that we can get for reservations. So the first one is when a reservation is created. Once one is created, we will indicate that that agent has been reserved to handle a call. We'll show where the call is coming from, and we'll let the agent know what language that reservation was requested for. Next, there's a bunch of single log lines that we'll do for when reservations are accepted, canceled, and the like. So these are all very similar. What they're going to do is just log out the reservation ID and the current state of it. So in this case, it's accepted. And I'm just going to pull in all the rest of them because they're all just single log lines. We have rejected, timeout, and canceled. Then one last thing inside of here, we need an onload function. This is going to state that we're initializing the taskrouter.js, and then we're going to create a worker using the worker token that we passed in to the window from agent.php. Then we'll register the taskrouter callbacks, and we'll bind up all the buttons, and we're ready to go test this out. So we'll fire up a PHP server on localhost port 8080. We'll load up taskrouter, and we'll load up our agent.php file, passing in Alice's worker SID so that we can look at Alice. Great, so we have Alice loaded up. So let's give our call center a ring, and when it answers, we'll press 1 to create a task for Alice because she's the only Spanish representative. She's currently offline, so nothing's going to happen until we click that Go Available button. But when we do, she'll be brought online, reservation will be requested, and she'll receive a call. And that's it. With just a little bit of PHP and a little bit of JavaScript, we've been able to create an agent dashboard for our taskrouter application. If you're working with taskrouter, let us know down in the comments. We'd love to follow up with you and hear what you're working on. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please click or tap the Twilio logo on the bottom left to subscribe so you know when we make more. If you want to get the code, there's a button in the bottom right for that. And if you want to watch another video, I picked one just for you. Until next time, I'm out of here.